Welcome. Welcome to Your Money Matters show. Your week welcome. Welcome to your weekly Money Matters show. Welcome. Welcome to your weekly Money Matters show. Your show hosted by Ripon, Ray, on a weekly basis. Yes. Yes, on a weekly basis. So today, yes, your host is Ripon Ray, here to support you and to guide you in the process when you want to know your rights on your money. Hence, the show is called Your Money Matters. So what do we have today for you? Today, we have tips of the week, where you'll get to find out how to improve your credit rating in the context of credit reference agencies. And of course, we have big shows too. In the show, we'll be focusing on two things. First, you'll know what is consumer credit. You'll know how you deal with when things go wrong in the context of consumer credit. And finally, in the second half of this show, we'll be looking at recourse to public funds, i.e., when there are issues of immigration, what you're entitled to and what you're not. And that's pretty much going to be the end. And of course, in the process, you'll be learning a bit about what members of the public think around recourse to public funds. So before we crack on with tips of the week, let's just recap our intentions. Yes. So tip of the week. Today's is going to be about how to get a better credit in the context of consumer. So what do you do to see whether you can improve your credit rating? Now, the first thing you do is check your credit file. Now, why that is the case? Now, it's simple, really. When you check your credit file, you'll see what's going on, whether if there's any fraud, whether if you have defaulted, whether if there are any mistakes, and whether you can correct those mistakes. If you can correct it, you are pretty much nearly there, because at least you know what your credit file actually shows. Now, second is disassociate. It's a bit of a long word, isn't it? So second, what you do is disassociate yourself from your financial partner. The question might be from you is, why should you do that? It's simple, really. When you take out a joint mortgage or a joint bank account, you become financially linked. Yes, financially linked to the person you've taken it out with. If, let's say, that person has a bad credit rating, this could impact you personally because you are jointly connected with that account. So let's say, for example, if you split up with your partner, husband, wife, or your friend you have a joint account with, you make sure you let the bank account provider know that you have separated, and you should also inform the credit reference agencies that you have separated your bank account. So therefore, this association with your partner is crucial when you are separate. Now, third tip is get on the electoral registry. So why that is? It's simple. It will improve your chances of getting loan or credit. Moment when creditors know that you are registered, they can then trace you. They can see that you exist. So this will help you to improve your chance, because then they'll know who you are. So the third tip is get on the electoral roll. Now, my fourth tip is close unused credit cards, store cards, direct debits, and mobile contracts. It's simple, really. If you have too many contracts that are open, it shows that you're all over the place. So be focused, be precise, and also lenders might consider the amount of credit you have access to, because otherwise they might think that you won't be able to repay what you might borrow. So that's why it's important to have not too many, but few and be selective. And fifth advice when it comes to have improving your credit score is by don't miss your payments. Don't miss payment or don't forget to pay late payment ASAP. Again, if you miss payment, you'll see the payment that you miss will show on your credit file, and of course, instead of it improving, it will actually decrease your score. So therefore, you find yourself difficulties getting a loan in the future. So sixth tip is pay off your debts. Now, if you constantly ignore your debt and don't pay, again, that looks bad on your credit rating because it signifies bad behavior if you don't pay to future lender. So think of ways to pay, of course, if you can afford to pay, that is. Now, 7.1 is build your credit history with a credit card. If you've never had a credit card before, it's difficult for a lender to assess you. Consider taking, here's the phrase, credit building credit card. Yes, there are such things that you call credit building credit card. Making a couple of purchases on it each month, then you pay back in full and therefore gradually building your chance with your credit score, and hopefully you will then rebuild your credit score. And 8th is take out a prepaid card to repay your credit. Now, what does that mean? It's called actually credit builder prepaid cards. It will help you again in your credit rating. They charge a monthly fee though, about £5, but you will need to keep paying for 12 months. Again, this will help you, and it's called credit building prepaid card. And lastly, tip is space out your credit application. Now, what does that mean? Credit reference agencies don't get hold of your rejected for credit card. Let me repeat this. Credit card reference agencies don't get told of you are rejected for credit card, but a note is made every time a credit search is made by a lender. So another word, constant check and constant checking by the lender shows that you are trying to borrow money. And if you're constantly borrowing money, automatically they think you're being rejected. So do very wary. So my tips of the week, as you know, but let's now move on to our main topic, that is of consumer credit and consumer credit debt. Right, so now today we are talking about consumer and consumer credit. Now to help us, we've got a guest on the phone. Let's see if the guest is there. Her name is Jane Clark. Jane, are you there, Jane?
I'm here, yes, listening quietly.
Oh, fantastic, Jane. So, as you know, today you are live on radio in the context of money and, of course, in your experience in the context of debt. So let's start with yourself. Where do you fit in the world of consumer?
Me personally, or what we do as a company?
Well, I mean, obviously you can introduce yourself first, and then at least we can understand where you fit in and your expertise.
Okay.
Fit in.
I'm a money advice consultant. I got into debt advice having been in debt myself.
Okay.
And I've been in money advice now for nearly 20 years.
Wow.
I work for a company called PayPlan, which is a free-to-client debt advisory service.
Right.
And I'm also chair of the Institute of Money Advisors because I'm very keen on helping people get out of debt. It's my passion as well as my job.
Jane, you won't believe this, but we can sense the passion in you as you speak when it comes to your job.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
I
at
think
least I'm not swearing about it.
Well, Jane, I personally think when someone is passionate about what they do and it shows, then it's more likely, you get drawn attention to it. And I think now I'm drawn towards you. So in this case, help us with a couple of questions, Jane.
Of course.
What is consumer? What is consumer credit?
consumer credit is basically credit advance to consumers, people like you and me,
Right.
for the purchase of goods or services. Now, that's a kind of literal definition, but we're talking about things like overdrafts, loans, credit cards, store cards,
Yeah.
short-term loans,
Yeah.
hire purchase, guarantor loans,
Right.
car finance, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So it's the things that we borrow money for to kind of pay up front and then we have to pay back.
Okay, so can you actually say, so when you are entering into an agreement with consumer, what sort of criteria do we look out for? What in order to make a consumer?
As a consumer, you
Yeah.
should always check the agreement that
Right.
you're going to sign. But basically, when you apply for credit, the lender should be checking to see that it is affordable for you.
Okay.
And they will do that by checking your credit file. And they're now, like debt management companies, lenders are also regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Right. Oh, now,
And they have to check
Right.
that people are, if a lender hasn't really checked,
Right.
how do they know whether somebody's able to pay it back? And if your credit rating is affected, you're likely to have to pay higher for the credit you borrow. It's risk related.
Right. So when, let's say, someone does default in paying consumer credit, what are the consequences?
Well, there are a kind of couple of consequences. There's two kind of meaning of default. There's the literal meaning, i.e. you've defaulted, you haven't paid. And there's also the kind of legal thing when a default is put on your credit file.
Right.
And basically that, when a default is put on your credit file, as a general rule, the creditor the agreement has now been broken.
Right.
And they can carry out their recovery procedure. So, of course, it's going to go on your credit file and it's going to stick there for 6 years.
Why 6
Now,
years?
Because that's all things that go onto a credit file are there for 6 years. So even if you go bankrupt, it's 6 years.
Right.
But the default itself, if you have made an arrangement to pay, although the default is there,
Right.
also your credit file will reflect the fact that you're paying off a certain amount. And in fact, there are people who are still paying off debts when the default has fallen off their credit file because it sits there for 6 years
Right.
and then it falls off a bit like a conveyor belt.
Okay.
And so it comes to 6 years and then it falls off, but you still might be paying it back.
So when someone is in default, I mean, in what way can that person be helped?
Well, first thing is to realise that there is a problem, and it's a shame that for most people that problem comes when they have got to default. People are, well, we're all like this, aren't we? Something's going to turn up. I'll have a bit more money tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's why people, for example, take out what used to be called payday loans, because they're sure they'll be able to pay them back at the end of the month.
Absolutely.
But this doesn't always happen. The thing to do is sit down and take stock. And the first thing anybody should ever do is work out how much money they have. Because other things, you find people advertising saying, would you like to reduce your payments by 50%?
Yeah.
Or that's the wrong way to do it. The right way to do it is to get in touch with a company. You can do it, not anonymously, but nobody else need know.
Yeah.
And get some free advice. And the first thing to do is work out a budget.
What do you mean by work at a budget? In what context do you work at a budget?
Well, if I've got somebody coming to me, I will be going through and I'll be asking them, how much money have you got coming in?
Right.
Are you paid weekly? Are you paid 4 weekly?
Yeah.
Are you getting any benefits?
Right.
I'll total up all the household income and then I'll ask them what they spend.
Right.
I'll cover things like mortgage or rent.
Yeah.
I'll go through things like this, council tax. I'll go through everything I can think of, and that will include cigarettes, that will include lottery tickets.
Yeah.
I won't leave anything out because people spend on these and you need to know.
Yeah.
Then we have a discussion, having a look at it,
Yeah.
seeing how much is there anywhere if they have a disposable income, when all that's done, that's great.
Yeah.
And perhaps if they budgeted using this wonderful word, cutting back on some things,
Right.
they'd be able to make their minimum monthly payment.
Mm-hmm.
But even if they make their minimum monthly payment,
Right.
there's still going to be interest and charges added. Interest added.
Yeah.
So really, you need to be able to pay more than your minimum monthly payment. And sometimes we have to have quite challenging conversations,
What do you mean by
both
challenging?
there and back.
What do you mean by challenging conversation?
Well, for example, I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah.
I'm a smoker.
Yep.
It's a really bad habit.
Absolutely. Terrible.
It is. It's bad for my health, but it's extremely bad for my bank balance.
Why is it? Oh
Now,
my
I don't
God,
smoke a particularly expensive brand of cigarettes.
Yeah.
They're £8.15 a packet.
That's a lot.
Now, when I'm talking to a client, I will ask them how many cigarettes they smoke a day. We'll find 20, 30. We'll find the occasional person who says 5. And I'll smile quietly to myself, thinking, you're not a real smoker.
Right.
And I tell them how much they spend, and it's a real shock. Now, to me, I did it for the first time for myself last night.
Right.
And I smoke a packet of cigarettes a day. On a good day. I have been known to smoke more.
Wow.
And they're £8.15 a packet, which means I spend £249.80 odd p per month on tobacco. It's just going up in flames.
Which obviously
what a waste of money. That's
Absolutely.
more than I spend on food.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, obviously, you're right. Go ahead.
Well, what I was, often is, even if you don't give up, if you cut by half, there's an extra £100.
Yeah.
Looking at, if you're going out every day for a Starbucks, look how quickly that adds up. £3.50 for a cup of coffee. Very nice coffee.
Absolutely. But it's gone. Once you consume it, it's gone.
It's gone. And do you actually really need it? How often has somebody been out for coffee at any place, not advertising anybody particularly, but you go somewhere and you leave half your coffee behind?
Absolutely. I mean, Jane, I've got a couple of case studies for you, just a bit briefly. I mean, I've got Mr. Muhammad Ali, actually, who's single and is on universal credit. Housing Association tenant, getting his full housing benefit council to reduction. His debts, going straight to it, is basically a loan, £9,000, and he's got an overdraft account. His disposable income, he thinks, is £20 per month. What would you say to that?
I would say he's lucky he's got £20 if he's on universal credit, to be honest.
Good. This is what you said, but go ahead.
No, but because there isn't a lot of spare money available, I'd ask how much the loan is. I'd ask how much else he owes, and I would total it up. I would go through a budget. If he's obviously in rented accommodation.
Absolutely.
If he own a car.
No car.
I'd be thinking, with that small income, I would be thinking of something called a debt relief order.
What's a debt relief order? Scary word.
Well, a debt relief order is, if you like, a form of bankruptcy that's done through an authorised intermediary.
Right.
And if the debt is under £20,000 in total, if they have no assets worth over 1,000, their car is worth no more than 1,000,
right,
and their disposable income is less than £50,
right,
there's a £90 fee, and a moratorium will be put on all their debts for a year. And if things haven't changed at the end of the year, all their debt is written off. So that takes a lot of stress off.
Absolutely.
If he got more than that, I mean, I'd be wondering if he was on universal credit, how did he manage to get a £9,000 loan in the first place? Was the lender doing due diligence and checking whether he could afford it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what happened was, with him, he actually had a job. He had a job, and then he had an accident. Since he had an accident, things went pear-shaped. So what would you say in that scenario?
I would sympathise for a start. We'd look about seeing is there any way that his income could be maximised. I'd find out how likely it was he'd be returning to work in the short term. I certainly wouldn't be recommending this debt relief order for somebody who's going to be back in work in 6 months.
Sure.
I would perhaps suggest token payments, an informal, if you like, a debt management plan done by the person themselves. But any good money advisor would help putting the budget together and helping with letters for the client to send to their creditors. It's the complete circumstance. It has to be a holistic approach.
Absolutely.
It has to be, is he entitled to any other benefit? You know, is he entitled to PIP, for example? Another one that's difficult to get. But, you know, look, is he getting everything? Is he getting full council tax reduction? Because sometimes they're not.
Absolutely. In Tower Hamlets, if you're on Universal Credit, let's say on job seekers, yes, it seems to be you are. So that's basically Muhammad Ali. I've got one more for you. One more.
Yeah.
His name is Nick Webster. He is actually good. It's a good one for you actually. He works. He gets £25,000 per year as an employee. He's a private tenant. He's got one credit card which he uses to gamble online on cryptocurrency, weirdly enough. And he's got a loan. Again, he uses credit card and his loan, totaling together to £8,000. But its sole reason he's in debt is partly because of his gambling habit. So what can be done here?
Well, again, the gambling issue has to be addressed because no doubt you could put a plan together, but if he's going to continue to gamble, the underlying issue is not being resolved. And it is an addiction. I can say that being a smoker myself, which is an addiction. But it is something that has to be dealt with before, or he has to be taking steps to deal with it. Contact someone like GamCare or Gamble Aware, somebody like that to help first and get some peer support. And then you can look at, you know, cutting out. Basically, there are various bank accounts available which allow you to kind of stop yourself gambling. You know, limited. You've got to be in a position where you're not going to gamble anymore, because if you are, you're not going. I certainly wouldn't suggest bankruptcy or anything like that. I certainly wouldn't suggest with two creditors an individual voluntary arrangement, which is another kind of legal form of kind of reducing debt. I'd look and see what his disposable income was. And I'd be realistic and pragmatic. Again, you have to look and see, sometimes people who are earning more feel that they're entitled to more in housekeeping. They feel they're entitled to more in entertainment. Well, if you want to get out of debt, you budget. But the bottom line for me with a gambler is that problem has to be addressed at the same time, preferably first, but at the same time, because it's certainly something. You're wasting your time trying to do anything if that problem isn't being addressed.
Absolutely. So, I mean, going back to PayPlan, in what way PayPlan can actually help when someone is in consumer credit debt?
Well, PayPlan is a free-to-client debt advisory service.
Right.
So anybody can ring us. I'll give you the number later. They can contact us on the web. They can even fill in the information on the web anonymously. And we can look at the situation for them, and look at what options are available. Okay? Now, many years ago, when I first started with the company, I used to write to people and say, look, it's free, confidential, and there is no obligation. And we are here to help, not to feather our own or anyone else's nests. Okay? What we want to do first and foremost, yes, we're a commercial company, but we are ethical, and we do not want people to suffer more than they have to, which is why we look and see, is a debt management plan best for you? Now, a debt management plan is a method whereby you work out what your disposable income is. That income is paid to PayPlan, which we distribute amongst all your creditors on a pro rata basis. So technically, now that means, for example, if I owed £10,000 and one creditor was owed £6,000, one was owed £3,000 and one was owed £1,000, and I had this magical figure of £100, I'd be paying creditor 160, creditor 230, and creditor 310.
Fun.
You see?
Yeah, of course.
And the concept of that is that everybody is going to be paid off at the same time if they freeze interest and charges.
Absolutely.
But remember, a debt management plan is an informal arrangement. It's a gentleman's agreement between the client and his or her creditors. So technically, a person can do this on their own. It's when you have multiple creditors it's difficult to do. The debt management company acts as the distributing intermediary, and we all feel that the fairest way is to pay people in proportion to what they're owed. And then you make the payment on a monthly basis. There is no fee for that. But if it's going to take an awful long time to repay, or it's never realistically going to be repaid, then we would look at other options.
Such as what?
Now, well, a debt relief order is an option.
Right, okay.
You know, I personally am an authorised intermediary, so I can do those for people.
Fantastic.
Bankruptcy may be an option. I may have to tell somebody, have you thought about selling your house? If they're older, have they thought about things like equity release? All these things are recommended by CONC, the Financial Conduct Authority Handbook.
Yeah.
And also the individual voluntary arrangement. Now, I'm sure some of your listeners will have had a phone call about this little-known government thing that could write off 80% of your debt.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
It's not suitable for everyone, but it is suitable for far more people now than it used to be. It would protect a property if you owned a property. And basically, an individual voluntary arrangement is a process whereby you pay back a proportion of the debt over 5 years, or in a lump sum payment, or a combination of the two, or really anything you put forward, and the rest of the debt is written off. And that, if it saves somebody money and time to repay, it's a very good option. Let me give you an example. Imagine you had £200 disposable income.
Right.
Yeah? And you owed £30,000, which is a lot of money.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, how long do you think it would take you to pay that off?
Well, from the top of my head, a very long time.
I've done this a lot of times, so I can tell you. It's 12 and a half years, right? 12 and a half years with no change of circumstances, your income not dropping, creditors all freezing interest and charges, not going for any further action.
Yeah.
But during the same period, with that same disposable income, if you were suitable and eligible, you could look at an individual voluntary arrangement. Now, if there's going to be a 5-year arrangement, and you're paying £200 a month, how much are you going to pay into that arrangement? It has to be what you can afford, incidentally. It's not a figure we pluck out of the air.
Sure.
It has to be gone through, a budget has to be gone through. But at £200 a month, if you're paying that for 5 years, you would be paying into the individual voluntary arrangement £12,000.
Absolutely, Jane.
And you owed 30, so how much have you written off?
How much do you think it will be?
£18,000.
That's not bad.
No, and you've repaid it in 7.5 years less than you would pay back in a debt management plan.
So Jane,
it's certainly not suitable for anything, and you can't just say, I want one of those IVAs.
Yes, Jane.
It has to be the best advice.
Absolutely.
Ripon.
So tell us, how can we get in touch with you? What's the number?
0800 716 239
239.
And that's free to mobiles as well.
Free to mobiles.
Free to mobile. Yes, you don't pay for mobiles either. And also, you can contact us at www.payplan.com. We have a Facebook page that you can message. And also on our website, we do have a forum that people can post questions on and get asked and answer questions.
Thank you, Jane. On that note, let's say we're running out of time, I'm afraid. So we thank you, Jane Clack, for giving your insight into consumer credit and debt. And of course, our listeners, thank you for giving Jane the platform to speak about her knowledge. So Jane, I would really like to thank you again.
A pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jane. So you take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. You heard this was Jane Clack from PayPlan. If you are seeking advice for free, you heard it's going to be PayPlan for you. So we are now going to take a brief break and then come back to talk about some of the tweets and our next topic, which is about recourse to public funds.
আরে সোর্স কোড E20 MB মারো না তোমার খুব সহজে তাড়াতাড়ি সিটি টায়ার তো লইয়া যাইব গাড়ির ইলেকট্রিক কার সহ যাবতীয় সমস্যার সমাধান ও মেরামতের জন্য আজই যোগাযোগ করুন সিটি টায়ার 175 176 অ্যাডলেট স্ট্রিট লন্ডন E20 LD বাইকুল আমান মহিলের নতুন বিল্ডিং এর পেছনে টেলিফোন 0207 790046 হ্যাঁ তুমি রেডি নি তোমার মালাটারে দেখছো আমি কইছি যে মাল বেশি
আমি কিছু জানি না আমার লাগে তারা আমি কোন এখনো যাইতাম না
ইয়া মাবুদ আমি এখন চিন্তা
এখন আপনি ফোন করবেন জেএমটিকে জেএমটি এয়ার কার্গোর মাধ্যমে 3 থেকে 5 দিনের মধ্যে আপনার লাগেজ পাঠান পৃথিবীর যে কোনো দেশের যে কোনো ঠিকানায় লন্ডনে একমাত্র আমরাই প্রথম এয়ার কার্গো যারা সিলেট ঢাকা ও চট্টগ্রামে ডোর টু ডোর ডেলিভারি দিয়ে থাকি
8 Fordham Street, London E1, telephone 020-724-7770.
জেএমটি এয়ার কার্গো
ট্রাভেলসের জগতে সকলের পরিচিত ও অত্যন্ত জনপ্রিয় একটি নাম হিলসাইড ট্রাভেল চায়না আফ্রিকা আমেরিকা কিংবা মিডল ইস্ট সহ বিশ্বের যে কোনো দেশের এয়ার টিকিটই এখানে সুলভ মূল্যে পাওয়া যায় বাংলাদেশ বিমানের সর্বোচ্চ টিকিট বিক্রেতা পুরস্কার ছাড়াও অন্যান্য পুরস্কার প্রাপ্ত হিল ট্রাভেল সর্বদা আপনাদের সেবায় নিয়োজিত গ্রুপ বুকিং এর বিশেষ সুবিধা সহ 24 ঘন্টা সেবা পেতে লগ ইন করুন www.hillsidetravels.com অথবা যোগাযোগ করুন Hillside Travel, Unit 388 Green Street, London E30 980. Phone 0208 55222033.
হুশিয়ারা ট্রাভেল সেন্টার
সুলভ মূল্যে বিশ্বের যে কোনো দেশে আন্তর্জাতিক ও অভ্যন্তরীণ রুটের ফ্লাইটের টিকিট
হজ হলিডে প্যাকেজ
ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়াইড কার্গো সার্ভিস
পাসপোর্ট ও নৌ ভিসা সার্ভিস সহযোগিতা
বাংলাদেশের জমি ক্রয় বিক্রয় সহ
মানি ট্রান্সফার করে থাকি
4 আওয়ার টেলিফোন 0207 790 1234.
অথবা 0207 702 7464
Fujiara Travels and Tours.
Welcome back to Your Money Matters show. Yes, it's Ripon Ray, your weekly show. If you want to get in touch, 0207 791 5170. So yes, we've heard from Jen Clack about consumer credit and debt. So since I have received a couple of tweets that I would like to share to you. First is from Ripon Bacon saying, I got into debt after losing my job. When I lost my job, I could not pay for my debts. I had over 40,000 loan and credit card combined. Without going bankrupt, I could not think about rebuilding my life. Well, thanks for sharing this, Reaper. Now I've got Nick Taylor from, well, he didn't actually say from where, but he says this. If banks can be rescued, why can't people be rescued too? People are definitely suffering from financially. Where is the government when you need it? Okay, thanks for that. Of course, thirdly, we have Ian Paisley. He says everyone should pay what they have borrowed. Or more like everyone must pay what they have borrowed. They should have bought or thought about the consequence before they borrowed the money. Well, thanks for your views, Ian Paisley. So yes, so what we have heard is, of course, consumer credit. Now we are to move towards recourse to public funds. But before we move to recourse to public funds, let's just briefly listen to what members of the public think about immigration and benefits.
I think if migrants have family in this country and they can support themselves, I think if there is an issue and they've been here for quite a while, then I'd say yes. But I mean for quite a while, I think because we're struggling already with the people that are supposed to be on benefits for genuine reasons, and then they're getting sanctioned or they're not getting the benefits due to the benefit structure changes. I think in line with other countries, they have to pay for their care, and whatever they're getting, the families have to look after them. And personally, I think we should be doing the same thing in this country, because our resources are so overstretched, and we're having so much difficulty just getting people the benefits that they should have, and then it's going to people that should not have it, that are creaming the system. And I think that's wrong, because at the end of the day, everybody should be able to pay their way. And if you genuinely can't work, or you have a situation that is beyond your control, you're sick, ill, whatever, then you should be entitled to help. But I think in general, no, I think everybody should be able to pay their way.
Okay, so my views on this is, I understand if people want to come over because they come from a country that's not safe for themselves, for their family. But I feel like, benefits I'm not too sure about, but they should 100% be given some sort of platform where they can, have stability in their life and be able to eat and everything. But, yeah, that's it.
If they genuinely deserve it or need the help, if they're genuine, not just because they've come here just to sponsor off of us, but the people that are here, if they fall on hard times, they should get help, and they don't. They suffer, and they go like all these homeless people that have worked all their lives, and then they fall on hard times, people get ill, nothing's worked out in the right way, everything's upside down, and the system don't work properly. They should, prioritise it, and people that are genuine should get help. People that ain't, they should make them earn their money in other ways. Don't just give them benefits, don't just give people benefits for nothing.
I think
There we are. So we heard what the members of the public in Britain think. But going back to the subject, recourse to public fund. The question is, what is no recourse to public funds? Since that is the topic for next half hour. Well, firstly, it's very simple, really. Those who are subject to immigration control have no entitlement to welfare benefits or public housing. That's what primarily no recourse to public funds mean, according to Homeless Link. So, yes, so individuals who fall under that category or that group would be as follows. This could mean who may have entered the country without a visa and are classed as illegal entrants. It could also mean documented or regular migrants are in the country legally with a valid visa that has no recourse to public fund conditions. Now, generally, according to Homeless Link, limited leave to enter or remain, i.e. with a visa with a time limit, is subject to the no recourse to public fund condition. Now, there are migrants who are not excluded from assessing welfare benefits, homelessness assistance and council housing because their nationality, immigration status are unable to claim these because they do not satisfy eligibility criteria. According to Homeless Link, these are EU nationals who do not have the right to reside in the UK, migrants who do not pass the habitual residence test, and migrants who do not pass the habitual residence test may even include UK nationals who return to UK after living outside of the common travel area. Or you could have primary carers of British citizen children. They could also come under, according to Homeless Link. Asylum seekers and refused asylum seekers are also excluded from accessing welfare benefits, homelessness assistance, and social housing. Instead, accommodation and financial support is available from the Home Office to those who have a pending asylum claim or appeal, or refused asylum seekers in certain circumstances. Now, um, no recourse to public fund is not always a permanent state. The circumstances of some clients change over time so that they can become eligible for public funds. For example, let's say, according to Homeless Link, asylum seekers who have been granted refugee status, humanitarian protection, or old style discretionary leave to remain become entitled to claim welfare benefits because they are granted leave to remain with recourse to public funds. And it could also apply to a visa overstayer who has made a successful human rights application and as a result has been granted limited leave to remain without a restriction on public fund. So therefore, you have to look at um, the term on which you are given your leave. Now, EEA migrants who start job seeking gain the right to reside in the UK can pass the habitual residence test and become eligible to apply for welfare benefits, provided they have resided in the common travel area for a minimum period of 3 months, and that's pretty much under EU law. However, they cannot claim housing benefit, so may still require housing support, according to Homeless Link. EEA migrants who start working will be exempted from habitual residence test and can claim in-work benefits. However, in order to demonstrate that they are a worker in order to claim benefits, they must satisfy DWP's minimum earnings threshold, which involves providing evidence of 3 months earning at a specified minimum level. So that's kind of pretty much what you're getting. But of course, in terms of support in the context of asylum seekers, let's say, for example, obviously what I'm saying is not really advice. You have to go and seek advice with individual lawyers when it comes to your entitlement. But this is in relation to homelessness that supports migrants. Asylum seekers with a claim in process who do not receive Home Office asylum support, they can look for support under Section 95 of the Home Office and Asylum Support, which includes accommodation and or financial support. Of course, for that, you need to go and speak to your Home Office immigration caseworker. Yes, if the asylum claim is still pending or still in process, it might be worth submitting a new application for Section 95 claim asylum support, especially if your situation has changed, for example. That's for Section 95 if your application is pending. And if your, let's say, asylum is refused, then of course you could Section 4 is another one. That's where actually when I worked as a bail for immigration detainees as a caseworker there, where I was advising and supporting detainees in detention center, I focus on Section 4. Section 4, it's when basically you are in financial hardship you basically, here we go. Refuse asylum seeker, receive a letter stating that your asylum is unsuccessful. But of course, because you are facing hardship, you can gain support under Section 4 instead of Section 95 of the Asylum Act. But of course, do seek advice. if the asylum process has ended, and your appeal is exhausted, no recourse to public funds and no right to work may be an issue. And of course, as I said earlier, when I used to be a caseworker, risk of detention and removal is a thing that you need to be very wary. Now, in terms of undocumented or irregular migrants, um, and you don't have visa or leave to remain uh, in the UK, again, it might be an issue that you might find scared to be in touch with the Home Office. But of course, that's something you need to be extra wary. But again, in terms of gaining support, legally speaking, you may want to think about two things: Section 95 of the Asylum Act or Section 4, due to hardship. But of course, regular non-EU migrants, um, you may find very difficulties coming out for support. Um, you don't need to worry if you are a migrant who you feel you have no right. You can still may be able to gain some forms of support from charities. Charities are meant to be independent. Through charities, you may find that you may get some help of some sort due to your destitution. And of course, from my experience, many migrants who are waiting for asylum, you may have to rely on friends and family for support. Now, that's pretty much if you are, of course, non-EU primarily. But what happens if you're an EU citizen? Okay, if you're an EEA national, you may be entitled to relevant related to benefits, so long you reside under EU law, and so long you're either exempt from habitual residence test, for example. But of course, it does also depends on when you enter. For example, if you are unemployed, EEA national, and has been in the UK for the last 3 months, if you've been here more than 3 months, then you might be apply for job seekers. But of course, the conditions you need to meet, because if you are here as, let's say, as a job seeker, because of course you're using your treaty right as a job seeker or worker, or you're a worker, self-employed, or a businessman, and you can prove that you are here for that purpose, the job center and others will definitely ask you for proof that this is why you're here. But of course, practically, it might be difficult for you to prove that you're here as a worker or you change your status. So yeah, again, you might need support from a benefit specialist for sure. And of course, I wouldn't surprise me, DWP going to be extremely harsh toward you. Very harsh indeed. And some of the cases that I've come across, this is what happens. Now, especially rules around, let's say, habitual residence test is not actually based on law itself, based on case law. So you need someone who really knows more about habitual residence issues. So you need a proper, thorough benefit expert who can actually support you in the process of being to obtain money. And of course, if you can generally prove, if you're an EU national, that you have been in the country for 5 years and you've been consistently working, then the situation might be different in a positive way. So again, if there are challenges to do with entitlement as an EU citizen, I would really recommend that you do seek advice. And don't feel afraid of speaking with charities, because they're not here to be enforcers of, or being an enforcer of the Home Office. Now, if you're a migrant, if you're destitute, there are some responsibilities local authorities might have hold, but of course that depends upon individual local authorities, because they do have duty under the Care Act to support individuals who are physically disabled or have illness or have mental condition. That's something you need to bear in mind. Of course, And also, if you fall under human rights issues where human rights might be violated or need to be protected, then local authorities might be able to help you. And of course, for that, you do need to think about obtaining lawyers to support you. Yes, if you have children, i.e., if you are non-British national but your children is in the UK, now local authorities have a duty to protect children as well. So through protecting children, you might also get some forms of protection. So this is how you might be able to obtain financial help if need be. So, well, this is kind of on a nutshell, really, but obviously, this is not specific advice. If you are genuinely seeking specific advice, you have to go for proper benefit advisor who knows how to give you advice in the context of obtaining money. In the context of immigration, obviously, you have to think about getting hold of a proper immigration solicitor. So to check if a solicitor is good, you can always go online and check Law Society's website to see whether the law firm is in existence and the law firm can support you. But do bear in mind, if you are thinking of taking on immigration cases, there's a limit to how much you can get support. Asylum cases, you get legal aid, but if it's to do with your immigration and stuff like that, you probably won't. So there's a limit to how far you can get financially support in terms of your case. So do bear that in mind. So it's not as easy as it seems, especially if you are a migrant. But of course, there are two types of migration here. One is EU, the other one is non-EU. So therefore, rules are very different. So that's kind of pretty much it, really, rather than me going into detail about recourse to public funds. I hope you enjoyed my brief introduction to recourse to public funds, and I also hope you've enjoyed what I've talked about in the context of consumer credit and debt. But of course, I've got a couple of tweets actually just have arrived. Let's just recap on the tweet again. There we are. So yes. So now in terms of recourse response, I've received actually three tweets. One from Majnimia. Majnimia says we should all contribute our share of tax before we think about taking money out on benefits. Okay, thank you, Majnimia. I've got Zadie Smith from Manchester. Migrants are treated as scapegoats. It is not fair. My parents were migrants from the Caribbean, and I'm a daughter of a migrant. Without us in Great Britain, Britain wouldn't be that great. Okay, so finally we have Tommy Robinson. Britain is British. Illegal immigrants to receive no benefits. That's according to Tommy Robinson. Okay, listeners, it's time for me to obviously say goodbye to you. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can tweet Ripon as Ray on tweet. And of course, if you want to get in touch with me through Betar Bangla Radio, is 027791517. And if you want to get in touch with me to talk about future topics that you want me to cover, I'm happy to do so. On this note, let me say goodbye to you, and let's recap on what our members of the public think about immigration and benefits.
I think if migrants have families in this country and they can support themselves, I think if there is an issue and I've been here for quite a while, then I'd say yes. But I've been for quite a while, I think, because we're struggling already with the people that are supposed to be on general rezoning, and then they get entitled or they're not getting the benefits due to the benefit structure changes.
I'm not afraid of talking hardcore topics.
In line with other countries,
there we are.
They share and whatever they get in, the families have to look after them. And personally, I think we should be doing the same thing in this country because our resources are so overstretched and we're having so much difficulty just cleaning the system, and I think it's wrong because at the end of the day, everybody should be able to get paid their way. And if you genuinely can't work or you have a situation that is beyond your control, your sick bill, whatever, then you should be entitled to help. But I think in general, no, I think everybody should be able to pay their own.
Okay, so my views on this is, I understand if people want to come over because they come from a country that's
আজকে লালন পল্লী খাবো বেশি লালন পল্লী খালি খাইতে হয় লালন কিনে আসি পল্লী হ্যাঁ আব্দুল করিম
Fine, how are you? I'm constantly experimenting with different things, you know. Oh, yeah, fine.
Good program, sir.
Yeah, constantly like practicing with different things. Oh, right, okay, right.